Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Learning Torah Lishma. You know, the Jewish boys, the Jewish men, then they come to marriageable age. They, to a certain extent, it's more difficult to get married. In the aspect of approaching a woman. You could learn, there's, people that, really, you could learn a lot from them, how to approach a woman, how to get her interested in you, and this and that, how to build yourself, how to put yourself together. And even in the Goyish world, they could say you do everything. And I've heard from like big professionals in the Goyish world that maybe not what, these stupid, Harvard and Hale would consider professionals, but what the people understand are people that really understand the sugya, really understand what's happening. And they'll say, the thing is today is you could push yourself and turn yourself into a real man. And even after all that work, the women still will treat you bad, still won't get how to act and how to be feminine. You understand? And in the Jewish world, the problem is, of course, to a certain extent, problems that we have there, we have here, you understand, but to a much minor extent. However, there's these own situation, and that is in the Goyish world, when you build yourself up, you could approach a woman and things will happen. You could start dating her, you understand? But in the Jewish world, because resume became such a must, it became like the Aseres Adibris, that in many cases, even if a mother suggests something for her daughter, the daughter will say, "Did you check the resume?" Almost certainly, if the brothers suggest something, that will happen. Certainly, someone outside the brothers, almost certainly, if their friends suggest it, they'll say the same thing. Cousins, aunts, uncles, whatever, people that they know well, a good neighbor. You understand? Now, it's true. My opinion is if you're an adult, resume just is not part of being an adult. So that just shouldn't exist. You understand? But this is not even, we're not even holding at that point of discussing that, because to them resume is such a must that even if a mother suggests something or a father, they will still say, "Did you check the resume? What about the resume?" You understand? So they don't trust their own parents, their own brothers. You understand? So this is the extent of what's happening. And they are so crazy that you're like wondering, how is it that once they get married, that whole issue, that they become normal. Now, this is when they get married relatively young, that this craziness hasn't been happening too long. But many women, that this craziness, and don't forget, about the Kyle problem. They put craziness upon craziness, and many of them get married late, and they have many years festering in this negativity. And once they get married, it's very they sort of get stuck. A woman that is in this negativity, but for a short time, you understand, could get out of its effects much easier, much quicker. But someone that was living in there for too long could find it practically impossible to leave. And there's a difference between a man and a woman. A woman is like a gem, a man's like a car. A gem, when you scratch it, when you damage it, it's over. It lost the pristine value that it had before. You understand? But a man is like a vehicle. Depends how you build it out. Do you build it out? Do you build it out to a Toyota, to a Honda, to a Mercedes? You understand? What do you build it out to? You understand? So a man can have more damage and get out of it because his existence is is he isn't given that value to begin with. He needs to create it. However, a woman is given that value to begin with, and therefore her skills of creating, becoming better, really working on herself, being self-conscious is very hard for her because she was given value. She is a precious stone. She is women, they like, why do women like diamonds? And why? You understand? Why do they like these precious, they like silver and gold necklaces? Why? Because, and men are like, they like the car. You understand? They like, the answer is because each one is syncing up with who they are. A woman's a diamond, a woman's gold, a woman's silver, and therefore she wants diamonds, gold, and silver. A man is like a car. He has to build himself, and therefore men like cars. You understand? You understand what's happening here? So once a woman's damaged, unless she really learns how to become a female builder, I'm not talking about become a male builder. No, she has to learn how to build, but as a female, you understand? In a female way, in a female special abilities, she has to learn how to grow. Most women do not possess this ability. They were never even taught that this is something that they should work on. Instead, they were told the opposite. You're perfect, men are the issue. And therefore, men are dangerous. And therefore, once she's damaged, it's very hard to fix. So if she gets married right away and there was very, very limited damage, or you got her right before the damage happened, and now she turns around. But once a woman is too long in it, she's very damaged emotionally, psychologically, physically. She's damaged. And then when you marry her, you have to deal with that. It's not pleasant. So one of the big things that could help with one of the things that could help is for a woman that's damaged is marrying a man at least 15 to 17 years older than her. The advanced age of the man forces her subconscious to act, to be submissive, to be nice. It's easy to scream and yell and try to control someone that's a few years older than you. But when the man is 15, 17 years older than you, you know, you know, you just don't, the woman doesn't feel at peace with herself doing that. And she reverts to acting like a woman. You understand? The problem in today is you have a Pesach crone coming out in a public. I mean, if a man wants to marry a woman older than him, that's his decision. I have friends that did that. I even have a friend that married a woman 10 years older than him. You understand? And I recently had a friend that he wanted to marry a woman that's 30 years older than him. So that I told him, I don't think that's going to work. You understand? I think the age is just, If the woman's 30 years old, younger than you, I've seen that that works. But the reverse, we're not going to get into right now the intricacies why that is, but I don't see that that works. You understand? She will literally lose all respect for you, even if she doesn't divorce you, which she probably will. But even if she doesn't, she completely loses respect for you. You couldn't get a younger woman. You had to marry someone 30 years older. Like, she just can't respect you. You understand? So, um, so this is so this is a way that a woman could fix the issue. Marrying a man that is clearly older, 10, 15, 17 years older than you. You understand? I think in the Jewish world, it's more. You need 15, 17. I think in the Jewish world, 10 years, 12 years, already could do the trick. You understand? 5 years is not going to do it. I think you at least have to be 10 years apart for it to, for, you know, for it to begin to work. You understand? I just remember like being on the airplane, and like the Jews in the airplane, like they go to the back and they go to the side and they want to just pray mincha. It takes like 15 minutes. And then you have, these female stewardess that they're like, no, you can't, and this and that. And they're trying, and they could sometimes bring the captain down, and the Jews just ignore them and pray. It takes a few minutes, and then they go back. If it was the Muslims, doing their bowings, no one would say anything. So we know they're being racist, so we just do it, and that's it. We're not blocking people. We go to the back, and we just do our prayers, and uh, and the so I've seen this, like you have this like young female, she looks good, but then she's trying to control this, because Jewish men, they have beards, and especially by Hasidim, they have these long beards. They let it grows long, and there's this man with this huge white beard, and she's trying to control him, and she just can't keep up the energy. She can't keep up the facade, and she just, you know, uh, stops because she's trying to boss around this manly guy that's in a different league than her. You understand? And she just, and maybe that's one of the few times in her life that she's actually becoming sensitive to her female parts of her. To her, no, that's a puny, because she loses her parts. But let's say a little nicer, she's becoming sensitive to her inner self, because I mean, a lot of these women, they destroy themselves to such an extent. They 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 scratch the diamond, they bang the diamond, they throw it in the garbage through the sewer. They do so much. It's like, what could you do after that? Like, I saw one of these stewardess that she literally went to a man's private part while she's giving food. It's a handsome guy, and he had like a cute little child, and I guess she's like dying to be married, or maybe she just feels attracted to him, and she just like, and she just laughed as doing it, and the man was like taken aback, and then she took it away, and if it was reverse, it would be like the head news, forget about it. But the man just let it go, you know. But you know, but that's like crazy, that's like crazy, something severely wrong there. You understand? She's completely destroyed herself if she's doing things like that. You understand? She could, slip a number, this, that. There's a way to do things. Even when you have limited time together, because it's on a plane, you could slip your number. You say, you know what, I really like you. Maybe we could go out once. Maybe we could do a Zoom, and we'll take it from there. There's a way to do things. You understand? So so uh, so a lot of women will be like, well, I'm not comfortable marrying someone so much older. Well, that's exactly what we want you to feel. We want you to feel this discomfort, because then you won't be such a jerk. You understand? The discomfort that you're feeling is, I'm going to have to be feminine, and I'm not used to that. You understand? That's the discomfort that you're feeling. It's going to force you, because people are going to be watching you, and you're going to just feel it just watching yourself. You are experiencing yourself, and you're going to be like, what am I doing? You understand? I'm trying to boss this boy around that's 10 years older than me. So if he's younger than me, if he's maybe a few years older than me, but 10, 15, 17 years older, we're like, she won't feel at peace with herself. You understand? So that's a way. That is an option. And yeah. So men today, they have to be extremely careful that they're feeling at peace, that the peace that they're feeling is not a facade. That Now, I do want to say something. You could have a great girl and a great boy, but together it doesn't work, because the way they view things, it's too different. One looks at things negative, one looks at things positive. One wants to just live in the city, and the other one wants to and become part of the community. The other one wants to travel the world, and you understand. You could have two good people, but just because they're good and she's beautiful and she's nice doesn't mean that she's gonna fit with you. You have to have similarity. You understand? You have to both be positive or both be negative. You have to have similarity. You have to be similar to each other. That you basically use the same tools. You understand? But as a woman uses the tool in one way. Like, for instance, I like to give this example. You know, in the olden days, rocks, today people don't think of rocks, but in the olden days, rocks was something that was a part of life. It was used for a lot of things. And when a woman thought of a rock, she would think about it, okay, how could I use this in the kitchen? I could crack an egg, I could crack, some nuts. And a man would think about a rock for a slingshot, for war, how to protect himself, how to protect his family. So they're both using the same instrument, but they have completely different way that they think about things. You understand what I'm saying? So they have a completely different way that they're using it. So that's what we mean when we say similar. A man and a woman at the end of the day will never be the same, because the man thinks from his mind, logically, what should I do? And the woman thinks from her feelings, since I feel so bad about what you said, that makes me right. You understand? That's the way she thinks. And the only chance that you have in today's day to stay married, you understand, and have a happy marriage, is if either you're both positive or you're both negative. You have to understand, and you have to be similar. You use basically the same tools, but as a woman, you use it in one way, and a man, you use it in a different way. But there's a familiarity there. You understand? There's a similarity there. You understand? You like to travel, she likes to travel, but you like doing slightly, you like to do this things, you like to go into the jungle, but she likes to go and visit the museums and the artistry that, in these different places that you go. So you have, she likes to talk and hear about, talk to the people and hear be empathetic with them, and he likes to go teach them how to build a house, how to create sewage and this and that. You understand? So that could work because you understand, because there's similarity there, and at the end of the day there is difference, but the difference is manageable because you could spend some time with her going. You don't have to spend all your time, but you could spend some time with her going to museums, and she could spend some time with you hiking. You understand? But when you want to be on the road and she wants to be a steady in a community, that won't work. You hear the nuance? You know, so you have to start understanding life in a deeper way. You have to start leveling up your wisdom. And you really, when you understand yourself on a deep way, that really helps for you to come up with the questions to ask her and see how she responds and to see if she really fits with you. You understand? Of course, there's also ways to figure out what her nature is, what that is, and absolutely you should do that. But first, if you understanding yourself is half the journey. You understand? It's half the wisdom that you need is understanding yourself. It might even be 75% of the wisdom. You understand? If you truly understand yourself, we're not saying if you have something, a bad character trait, that you give into it. No, of course you try to change that. But I'm saying you understand yourself. That's 75%. If let's say you didn't understand her, but you understood yourself and you were able to ask her good questions that would qualify, would she be in sync with me? You understand? That's already 75. Now, the other 25% is very, very important. And I would advise you to raise your wisdom to learn to figure out from how she acted. Yeah, she treated you nice, but when she looked at the waiter, how did she treat him? Was he like, you piece of garbage, I just want a rich man? Or did she treat him with dignity as well? You understand? You have to look at the broader picture. We're living in great times. We're living in great times. At the end of the day, you could figure out you can't control someone else what they're going to do. You understand? You could try to create a system that creates good people, absolutely, better people, absolutely. But at the core, all you could do is is you yourself. So have more wisdom, have more understanding, become a higher level person. And it doesn't mean that just because sometimes you had a blowout because of the what's happening, how you're being treated, it's normal. It happens. You understand? If it's happening all the time, that's a big issue for that. You understand? Don't judge yourself by that once in a while scenario that happens. You understand? Don't be fooled by people to judge yourself by that once in a while situation. And of course, work on yourself, become better. You understand? Absolutely. But learn to be kind to yourself, to love yourself, and to have confidence in yourself. Sometimes being strong, being harsh is what's needed. You understand? You have to have trust in yourself. If you thought about it and that's what you thought should be done, trust yourself. You understand? Of course, the other person won't agree with you, and many other people won't agree with you. You have to learn to trust yourself. You understand? And stop being afraid about what other people are going to say, what they're going to do, this, that. You have to become you have to become a man. Stop living in fear of what other people say and do. Become a strong man, physically, emotionally, financially. Learn to appreciate your manhood. Ignore the feminists and ignore these purple demons. You understand? Purple hair demons. Ignore them. And there's sometimes there could be really beautiful girls that are feminists, crazy wackos, and they could say something to you. Don't be affected. Don't change your good ways. Come on, you never got laid. Come on this, come on that. Don't be changed by these evil bitches. You understand? Don't be changed by them. In heaven, they're going to be at such a distance from you that you'll never even think about them. You understand? You'll never hear their voices. You're going to be in heaven, and if they're lucky, they'll be in hell. You understand? You have to know your worth, your erech. I want to talk a bit about, in the Frum Orthodox Jewish world, as we said, it's pretty, like you're wondering, like, once like the women that get married young, that you thought that that they can never come to normality, and then they become normal, because this whole resume and kollel thing, it's a brainwash. You understand? It's not. You understand? It's a brainwash. The women don't really want that. So now we're not talking about the 1 in a million exception. If that's the way you think, you can't succeed at anything. You always have to look at the majority, and especially the overwhelming majority. And the overwhelming majority, this is not what they're looking for. And they understand this in their subconscious or maybe even conscious to be wrong. But they either feel pressured or pushed or brainwashed into it. You understand? So, although, we talked about, what other option do you have than to approach her and try to be kind and say hello and say, you know what, I really like you. Maybe we could go on a coffee date, Maybe I could take you out for lunch or something. You understand? What other option do you have? At the same time, you're very afraid about her attacking you, the workplace that you're working at attacking you, if you're both working in the same place, about some people attacking you because of that, getting a bad name. And we said, at the end of the day, what option do you have? You understand? But at the same time, you have to learn how to do it. And you have to learn how to do it, for when a guy goes out and he does it, he doesn't have to be so experienced, because the girls are not brainwashed into resume, you understand? So it's way easier. But in our world, you understand that we're girls that, because we're forbidden from marrying a woman that's not Jewish, you understand that's God's rule, and of course it makes sense, because if if we can marry anybody, then all the Jews would just marry out, and then the whole religion would be gone. Because the Jewish religion is different than Christianity. Christianity, there's no laws. They took away all the laws. But Judaism, there's all the laws, and the laws only apply to someone that is a Jew. So if you marry someone that's not a Jew, and they don't have to keep the laws because they're not a Jew, then eventually you'll stop keeping the laws as well, whether you're male or female. You understand? And everything will fall apart. So there has to be a certain circularity in order to make sure that everything continues. You understand? But At the same time, a, a non-Jewish woman or a non-Jewish man can convert if they so choose. You understand? So it's not that, but they have to start keeping the commandments and go through a conversion. You understand? So so you understand? So it's not like someone that's not a Jew can never marry a Jew legally. I mean, according to Jewish law. Yes, they can. They need to convert. You understand? So that's, of course, an option. But in your regular day to day, right, to go out with someone that's not Jewish and then to get her to convert, and then that's a pretty long, some people might have to take that route, especially today. You understand? But that's a long route and pretty difficult. You understand? So practically, you need to approach another Jew, a Jewish woman. You understand? You need to approach her. So it's important to learn how to do that. You understand? And there are, unfortunately, in the Jewish world, they don't really have, if you try to go to someone that's a big thinker in the Jewish world today, they really won't know how to teach you how to do that because there's resume and that whole thing doesn't exist, and it's frowned upon and attacked, and the system attacks people that do that. You understand? So unfortunately today you have to find, there's Goyim that give a very good method of teaching of how they do it. By a guy, most of them actually would, they would they want to have sex even before marriage. You understand? So you have to know how to be like Rabbi Meir. You have to take the good and leave the bad. You understand? You're a Am Kaddish. You're part of a holy nation, and God expects more from you. You understand? He would love if someone that wasn't a Jew would also would not have sex before marriage, but he doesn't obligate them. He knows that for them, that's going overboard. But for the Am HaNivchar, for the nation that chose God, and therefore God made us his chosen nation, from all the nations, we are we're like the firstborn. B'ni b'chayri Yisrael. We're like the firstborn. We're specially chosen, and just like the firstborn, uh, he's older, more experienced, and he teaches the younger siblings. At least that's what's supposed to happen, and helps them to mature quicker and to mature. So too, Klal Yisrael is the Bechar, is the firstborn, and we're held to a higher standard. So you have to know, even if you're learning things from them, not to go overboard and do things exactly. You have to know how to, no sex before marriage. For a Jew, we don't even touch another woman before marriage, right? Forget about kissing. We don't even touch hands. You understand? Yichud. We're not in a house alone with another woman. That's not our wife. You understand? There's yichud. Now, a sister, a mother. There are certain exceptions, but a girl that you're dating, or just some random girl that possibly might become your wife, that's yichud. You understand? So, so one needs to understand that and keep with the Jewish laws, learn how to become more professional, how to approach, first you say, oh, hello, it's nice to meet you. Listen, you look like such a nice person. I would love to maybe we could get to know each other better. Maybe I could take you out for lunch. I would really like to take you on a coffee date. Light, easy, you understand? And when she pushes back, you have to learn how to say, you have to learn how to not allow the woman to control the whole thing. You have to learn how to, you know, uh, you have to learn, yeah, I'll just give an example. I saw these guys that they went around with, like, they had like this, like in a bag or knapsack, they had I think a bag, they had a container of dates, and they went around to women. They said, would you like a date? And the woman obviously thought a date as a date. And then when the woman was giving them a hard time, they were like, no, 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 no. They took out of the they took out of the bag, they took out of the knapsack, they took out a little box of dates, and like, no, I just wanted to give you a date. That's all I was asking. And then she starts to laugh, and then she agrees to go on a date with them. You understand? So sometimes you have to be a little creative, maybe, and don't let her control the the we're not talking about it in an evil mean way. We're talking about it in a funny, nice way to learn how to not allow her to control, because to control the conversation. That now you're going on her assumptions, now on what she says. You're you know uh, you're defending yourself on what she said. You understand? Don't go that way, because that shows weakness. That shows and a woman wants to see manhood, leadership. She wants to see that you're self-sufficient. And when the woman is able to control you so easily, she subconsciously, you know uh, starts to dislike you. So you have to learn how to do things, tactfully, in a funny way. And we're in a proper way. We're not talking about doing nasty, mean things. You understand? You have to learn how to be charismatic, have a little humor, learn how to change the subject. She says this, and when you begin, keep it a bit vague, so you could always say, no, no, I didn't mean that. I just you could start off, oh, it was very nice to meet you. you know maybe we could go out sometime. And she'll be like, no, I don't really date men that I just met. And then you'll be like, no, 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 I didn't say anything about a date. I just wanted to meet you. I wanted to get to know each other. Then we'll see if we'll have a date. You understand? There's these tactful ways of doing things. So one should understand, learn how to do these things. And I won't lie to you, they're pretty brainwashed, but uh, this will greatly enhance your abilities and success rate. You understand? And at the end of the day, you only need one, right? You only need one wife. We're not. This isn't the hood. You understand? This isn't we're talking about holiness over here. You only need one, and that is and that is manageable. You understand? That is manageable. It's manageable, even in this. I mean, I like to believe it's manageable, even in this. But at least you have to think that way. That is manageable. That's doable, to get a nice, pretty girl, that she's kind. You understand, caring, not controlling. You understand? And I'll tell you something from what I've seen. The girls that are actually girls that are nice, kind, and beautiful, uh, they will be more receptive to this. A girl that's fat, a girl that's mean, a girl, a lot of times it goes together. They'll be less receptive to this approach. So many times you'll be like, oh my goodness, I tried and it didn't work, and this and that. You have to know, if it didn't work, there's a good chance that that girl would have been a complete disaster in your life. She would have been like a demon coming after you. You understand? So sometimes when it goes bad and you're feeling bad, you have to know that you're lucky that it went bad. You understand? Because you wouldn't want her in her life. There's a lot of damaged goods out there. And it's not just physically, it's emotionally, it's how their brain works. You understand? They're very damaged. So when you try to do things in the proper, normal way of the way things should be, good women will be more receptive to that. Bad women will be less receptive to that. Okay, I think we've discussed a good portion of this, and 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 look into the matter, become and of course learn how to the methods that you hear. You have to take out having sex right away. You have to, you have to refine things a bit because you're a holy Jew, and we're not a commoner. We're a family of princes and princesses. We're the children of the king. You know, and that's because we chose God, and therefore God chose us, and that's what we are now. So we have to act in a higher, elevated way. It's just, and again, it's just because, unfortunately, the resume completely, takes away this whole anybody talking about how to approach a girl, because there's resume and there's shatchanim, and therefore that's how it happens. So therefore we have to go to maybe others. Therefore we have to look into guys that are really professionals at doing it, and they could teach you the methods, how to do it in a kind, polite way. And you have to know, you have to tweak it. You have to tweak it a bit because you're holy. You understand? You understand? So there might be some guy that also, hold themselves to a higher standard, and will be more in line to what Judaism allows and doesn't allow. You understand? But at the end of the day, you're going to have to know that you're going to have to use your wisdom as a prince and princess. And whatever wisdom you get, you have to bring it up to the level of how a prince and princess would use that wisdom. You understand? So that's important. All right, I love you, and Hashem loves you more. And we want to bless you all to have great success. And I love you, and Hashem loves you more.